that if you think that something is your fault, it means that there's something you can do. So there's something you could have done differently, or there's still something that you can do now to influence the outcome. Whereas if you feel like it has nothing to do with you, or it's not your fault at all, it kind of disempowers you, because that it means there's nothing else you could do or say to influence things, to make them work in a different way. Welcome everyone to LifewithLiza podcast. Our mission at LifewithLiza is to share people's stories and the challenges that they have overcome, so that those who are listening in can get the strength, the courage, and the hope to be their better selves. And today we have a special edition episode. Welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining in and investing the time and energy into becoming your best self. I hope you are enjoying these solo episodes. So the topic for today's episode is quite an interesting one. For the longest time ever, I've had as my wallpaper on my phone the cover that said, "Everything is my fault. Everything is my fault." And whenever someone would look at my phone, they would think that I'm depressed or very sad, and they could not understand how "everything is my fault" could be the most empowering phrase I've ever heard. So I wanted to record an episode on that and share why it is so empowering to think in that way. So I remember the first time I've heard about extreme ownership and "everything is my fault" phrase from Tom Bilyeu while I was watching his Impact Theory episodes. And he basically mentioned that thinking that everything is your fault is the most empowering thing you can do. And the reason for that is that if you think that something is your fault, it means that there's something you can do. So there's something you could have done differently, or there's still something that you can do now to influence the outcome. Whereas if you feel like it has nothing to do with you, or it's not your fault at all, it kind of disempowers you, because then it means there's nothing else you could do or say to influence things, to make them work in a different way. And that is very disempowering. And I remember he was giving him like a crazy example when he was saying, let's say his wife goes to London from the US, and then a meteor or like some space rock hits the earth and hits her house, and she gets killed. And he would still say that it is his fault, because he is actually on the board of that space organization. He has never invested more money into the research of that organization, even though we all know that there are risks of space rocks hitting our planet. So there was something that he could have done to prevent that situation. And of course, many of you now listen to this would say, this is so extreme, this is very extreme examples, and of course, there are things that are not really our faults, etc. But the point that I'm trying to make is, if you think through the lens that everything is my fault, it is a way more empowering lens, because that lens allows you to see what you can do to change things, instead of just falling under the victim mindset where there's nothing you can do. And when you feel like there's nothing you can do, this is something that brings your energy down. It's something that puts you into inaction. It's something that it's just something that helps you, it facilitates losing the momentum. Whereas when you're like, okay, everything is my fault, and then your brain is like, okay, if it's my fault, it starts thinking what I could have done differently in the past, and you almost get like a list of things. Oh, I could have said that differently, I could have sent that message, I could have used better words, blah blah blah. And then how you will act now, because it is also your fault, it's very different. And I think it's not, I think it's also very important to know that it's not that it's more like a game that you play in your own mind, because of course, there are people who can use that against you. If you say like, yeah, everything is my fault, they will be like, yeah, everything is your fault. But this is not the productive way. It's the best productive way when you just realize that things are your fault and act differently, and the other person does the same thing from their side. But I hope what you're getting from this very extreme example, but I feel like the extreme examples give us the essence or the point that we're trying to make, that we try to influence the lens through which we view the world into becoming the more empowering lens. And then that also allows us to take on a more stoic approach to life, because basically in the stoic approach to life, we look at things that we are fully under our control and that we can fully influence, and we try to do them instead of thinking about things that we can partially influence or things that we cannot influence at all, because also looking at those things and trying to control them is very disempowering. So I think just a few examples from my recent life, just to make the point a bit more clear, is even with like everything that's happening in Ukraine, there are a lot of things that I cannot control, and it's definitely everything that's happening in Ukraine, it's like it makes you feel quite small and powerless, and that's why taking the approach of everything is my fault is quite empowering, because then it still allows you to look through the lens, okay, what can I do, what can a person do, where it's to share information with other people, to have more open conversations, to ask more questions, whether it is to donate money to other organizations that I personally support and believe that they're doing a good cause, or just having some group meditations, or checking in on my parents, making sure their mental health is okay, and just finding the things that I can personally do in this plethora of things that I cannot control or I cannot do. But just viewing this through the lens of everything's my fault allows to change that perspective. And I also invite you to think about where can the everything is my fault perspective actually help you. And maybe the language, also everything is my fault, I know that for some people the language sounds way too extreme and even a bit triggering, because of course not everything is your fault, we do understand that, but just I hope you can use that as an example, as a very extreme example that still helps me get the point across. So if you look at your life and see the situations like everything is my fault, how could you have acted differently, or what you can do differently in the future? What are the things that are actually in your power, in your control, that you can do to change the outcome? And once we think like that, and once we take ownership, the world becomes such a more beautiful place, because we stop telling other people what they should do or how they should have acted, and we just act differently ourselves. And by that we start changing the reality. And also we feel better, because we, as Stoics says, like whenever we focus on the things that we cannot fully control, we're just destined for misery and unhappiness. So by looking and finding the things that are in our control, we're entering a more empowering world. So I will end this video by this invitation for you to review any situations in your life where the everything is my fault perspective could be serving you, and please feel free to rephrase this phrase if that language is triggering for you. But I hope that you got the point how changing the way you view the world and viewing it through that lens of taking full ownership can be so empowering. And that's what I wanted to do with this video, to share that knowledge and to also empower you to take ownership of your life. I hope you did enjoy this episode. If you did, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, or follow this podcast if you're listening in, and share it with anyone you think for whom it might be useful. And I see you tomorrow in the next episode.